What's up everybody, I'm Kirk, welcome back to the channel. Developed by Byte Barrel and set to be published by 1C Entertainment, Forgive Me Father is a retro FPS inspired by Lovecraft and presented in a dark, inky comic book style, full of necrotic imagery. Forgive Me Father is set to hit early access this October of 2021, but a demo is dropping for the October portion of Steam Next Fest, and the publisher was kind enough to send me the code early. And so for today's video, I will be giving you my first impressions of this spooky shooter. Is Forgive Me Father a Halloween treat that deserves to be on your radar? Well, let's find out. But before all that, if you're new here and you're digging what you're seeing, please consider supporting this channel by liking and subscribing. Alrighty, let's pack the crucifix, spark up the lantern, and get to splatting. In Forgive Me Father, you play as a priest, or journalist, who, on a dark and windy night, have found themselves surrounded by the rotting, hungry undead. I should note for the demo we are limited to only the priest, and apparently the difference between the two characters in the full version will be their upgrade skill trees, which we'll talk about a little later on. Alright, so how have the dead risen? Well, that's the mystery you'll have to solve. And I'm sure in typical Lovecraft fashion, there's some occultic tomfoolery to blame. Oh look, a fellow gunslinger. Story will be a focus in this old school shooter, and it will be driven by documents and other clues found in the environment, labeled as, well, story. Maybe a hair on the nose if you ask me, but the presentation of such materials is, so far, simple and clean, sliding onto screen in comic book panels with their own artwork. An efficient and aesthetically pleasing way to tell the story, left totally optional to the player. Father's hand-drawn comic book art style is the standout here, featuring inky, distinct line work and vibrant colors textured as if they were carefully applied by brush. The highlight so far being the gruesome enemy designs, which I think look great. The little touches also go a long way too, like the onomatopoeia that pops up when eviscerating enemies and the fantastic looking foliage that waves and flutters in the wind. The downside right now is the animations for the enemies, which are on the simple side. Enemies have maybe a handful of animations, looking like a flip book that needed a few more pages. The real bummer is that it can make some of the more clever animations hard to catch in the heat of gameplay. For example, one of the zombie types carries around a severed head, and if you decapitate them, they'll quickly replace it with the noggin in hand and keep coming at you. Obviously, this flies in the face of zombie logic, but I thought this was a pretty funny and clever gag, and I didn't catch it until late in the demo because of the animation style. My other issue with the visuals has to do with the doors, which just disappear when you open them. I mean, we can't do something better here, because right now this looks like jank. In terms of gameplay, Forgive Me Father, so far is looking like a straightforward, mechanically sound shooter with some unique aspects to spice things up. Your starting weapons are pretty typical. A knife for melee, a revolver, a double-barrel shotgun, which can make some pretty big puddles, and a Tommy gun, which I wasn't crazy about due to the kickback and spread, but that opinion could change with more time spent with it and more upgrades applied. Ah yes, the upgrades. Killing enough enemies will level the player up, which grants them a point to spend in the sprawling upgrade tree. Weapons can be improved significantly here, like turning your knife into throwing blades or doubling your revolvers for some dual-wielding action, at the expense of accuracy. There's a lot of WIP circles on this tree, and I'm eager to see what other deadly implements and variations on those implements the devs have in store for us. Something tells me this game is looking to get creative. The demo features the first 3 levels of the game, and I have to be honest, the opening level was not grabbing me. The enemies were the issue. Level 1 features only the zombies. They're not bad necessarily, they're basic fodder types, but they're not terribly interesting to fight. All they do is beeline it towards you and can be killed easily. Where they're dangerous is when they're in large numbers, and that's because if they surround you, they will physically block your movement like an invisible wall. This frustrated the hell out of me, and granted, the purpose of it is to keep you moving and to keep pressure, but it wasn't much fun and it felt kinda cheap. Plus, they barely make any noise, which drove me nuts. You might catch a light moan or growl, but most of the time you won't hear a zombie until they're chomping on you. Here, listen to this. I mean, at least get some footsteps in there, because right now this sound design is a little anemic. Thankfully, the next couple missions were a lot better. More enemy types were introduced and were a lot more interesting to fight. Essentially 2 types of projectile throwers and explosive barrel mimics that will kamikaze you. Clever. It's in these levels where the demo got its hooks in me, and I started having fun, with the zombies used more to complement the other enemies and add pressure, rather than be the main threat. That first level needs some retooling, less zombies and more of the latter enemies introduced. Right now, I really don't think it makes the strongest first impression. One thing I do like is how the enemies can change depending on how you damage them. For example, you can shoot the heads the zombies are carrying to prevent them from using them, which is cool. But a better example are the mobsters with giant slices through their abdomens. If you shoot their bottom half, their top half will fall and crawl towards you. There's also the soldiers, sometimes cops, that have liquid tanks on their backs that I assume is their ammo. If you break these tanks, they'll bum rush you instead of shooting you. I like this system because it hints at enemies that will require some steps to kill, and it gives the player some room to strategize, along with consequences for sloppy play. One cool aspect are the special abilities and tools, which can be governed by maddness. Maddness is that purple meter in the bottom right corner. Maddness depletes by use of certain abilities, but also slowly drains over time. The only way to refill it is to kill enemies. The first of these abilities is your lantern, which, as you might expect, is handy for illumination in the dank darkness. The catch is that you cannot use your weapon while using the lantern, something that instantly reminded me of the flashlight mechanic in the original version of Doom 3. There's only one section of the demo where the lantern is required, but I expect the full game to make further, clever use of it to likely scare the pants off of us. The second ability is your crucifix, which heals the player. This actually uses maddness, and I can foresee some tense moments where the player is desperately trying to heal before the enemies reach them, all the while making sure they're getting kills to keep the madness filled. It's simple, but there's some potential to have some pretty intense gameplay with this system. The other thing to mention about maddness is that apparently it will have some influence on the audio and visuals of the game depending on how much of it you have. However, I didn't notice anything like this in the demo, or if I did, it just didn't register. But I am curious to see how this will play out in the final version of the game. After playing this demo, I can't really say I'm super duper excited for Forgive Me Father. The demo does demonstrate that it's a competent shooter with a cool art style, but this one could go either way for me. Depends on how far the game's systems are taken, like the upgrades and enemy damage, and if some of the issues I had are able to be addressed. Luckily though, we won't have to wait too long to see more. Forgive Me Father is currently slated for early access at the end of this month, October 26th of 2021, with 15 levels planned for that release, 30 total in the full version. Now, of course, this video is just my opinion, and an initial one at that, and I'm curious to hear what you guys thought of this demo. If you had a chance to play Forgive Me Father, please be sure to let me know your thoughts on it in the comments, and leave any suggestions you have for the developers. And if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future uploads. It's a couple clicks for you, but a massive help for this channel. And be sure to come say hi in the Kirk Collects Discord, linked below. I'm Kirk, and thank you for watching this video. Stay safe out there.